He woke up in the dead of night, and the last thing he expected to see was the mistress of the plantation standing over him. The year was 1834, and the Whitford plantation slept under a heavy Georgia night, thick with humidity and the faint buzz of insects. The main house stood proudly on the hill, lit only by the weak glow of one dying lantern on the porch. But down near the edge of the fields, far from the polished white pillars and shining floors, sat the workshop, a rough wooden structure where Josiah, a skilled enslaved carpenter, lived and worked. Josiah had spent the entire day repairing shutters on the main house and carving a new banister for the back staircase. His hands were cracked, his shoulders aching, and by nightfall he sank into his straw-filled cot with that familiar exhaustion that came from working sun-up to sundown with no room for complaint. Sleep took him fast, but something pulled him back to consciousness before dawn. A whisper of movement, a distant creak, the faint smell of perfume that did not belong anywhere near this place. Josiah opened his eyes, slow and cautious, because waking suddenly in the dark could mean anything on a plantation. A rat, a stray dog, an overseer checking to see if he was where he was supposed to be. But what he saw when his vision cleared froze his breath in his throat. Standing beside his bed, holding a small lantern close to her chest, was Mrs. Eleanor Whitford, the mistress of the plantation.
Her silk nightrobe brushed the dusty workshop floor. Her blonde hair, usually pinned tight in the presence of guests, was loose around her shoulders. Her face looked drawn, pale in the lantern light, eyes rimmed with the kind of fear that doesn't show itself in daylight. "Josiah," she whispered, barely audible, as if afraid the walls themselves might be listening. Josiah scrambled upright, heart pounding. "Ma'am?" He tried to keep his voice steady, respectful, but confusion wrapped around him like a rope. Eleanor never came down here, ever. During daylight, she might pass him on the porch and nod curtly, but never spoke unless it involved household repairs, and never, absolutely never, after dark. She swallowed, and Josiah noticed her hands trembled slightly around the lantern handle. "I'm sorry to wake you, but I didn't know where else to go." Josiah blinked, unsure how to respond. There were rules, spoken and unspoken, about how close an enslaved man could stand to the mistress, what tone he could use, where his eyes were allowed to rest. And right now, those rules felt like they were breaking under his feet like rotten wood. "Ma'am, is something wrong?" he asked carefully. Her breath shook as she let it out. "Josiah, they're planning to punish you at dawn." The words hit him harder than a blow. Punish. Dawn. Josiah's skin went cold. He knew what punishment meant on this land. He'd seen scars on the backs of other men. He'd heard the cries. He'd helped carry more than one friend back to his quarters after the overseer was done. I don't understand," Josiah said softly, because he didn't. He had worked straight, kept his head down, avoided trouble. "You're being accused," Eleanor whispered. She took one step closer, not too close, but closer than any white woman was supposed to ever be to him. "They say you stole the silver tray from the dining room cabinet." Josiah stared at her, stunned. "Ma'am, I've never even touched—" "I know," she cut in, voice trembling. "I know you didn't, but my husband is convinced you did, and he intends to make an example of you." The room felt smaller, tighter. The shadows around them seemed to lean in. Josiah swallowed hard. Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes flicked toward the barn door, as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. "Because the punishment he has planned is severe," she whispered, "and because—" She hesitated, searching his face. "Because you're innocent, Josiah, and if he does this to you, no one will ever know the truth." She took a shaking breath. "And I cannot let that happen."
If you're already on the edge of your seat, smash that like button. Comment what you would do if you were Josiah. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss where the shocking truth comes to light.
He thought the night was over, but the accusation was only the beginning. The first hint of dawn was brushing the sky with pale orange light, but the workshop remained dark and tense. Josiah's hands shook slightly as he tried to steady his breathing. Eleanor's presence was a shock, but the real terror came from what she had just told him. He was going to be punished at sunrise for a theft he didn't commit. "Please," Eleanor whispered, glancing toward the main house. "You must listen carefully. There isn't much time." Josiah's heart pounded in his chest. Every muscle screamed for him to run, to hide, to disappear into the fields before the overseer or the master arrived. But he also knew the plantation like the back of his hand. Escape in broad daylight was impossible. And even if he could run, would he survive? Who accused me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "My husband," Eleanor replied, her eyes dark with worry. "He claims you took the silver tray from the dining room cabinet, but you didn't, Josiah. I know that." Josiah's mind spun. The silver tray? That had been in the cabinet yesterday morning, untouched. He hadn't moved it, and yet the master's wrath was swift and merciless. Eleanor's hands trembled as she placed the lantern on a nearby stool. "He wants to punish you severely, and he'll do it at sunrise if no one speaks up." Josiah swallowed hard. "Then why are you telling me this? Why would you risk your safety?" Her eyes darted nervously toward the window, toward the sound of distant footsteps and the faint whistle of the wind through the trees. "Because," she whispered, "I know the truth, and if he punishes you, the truth dies with you." Josiah felt a strange mix of fear and confusion. The mistress of the plantation, a woman he had always treated with the strictest respect, was now standing beside him, warning him of death and injustice. He had been careful all his life. Hadn't he done everything right? And yet, here he was, accused of a crime he didn't commit, powerless against the master's authority. Eleanor's voice lowered even further. "It's not just about the silver tray. My husband, he has debts, gambling debts. He sold things from the house. He lied to cover it. And when he realized the silver was missing, he needed someone to blame. He chose you." Josiah's stomach dropped. The plantation, the household, even Eleanor herself, it all felt suddenly like a cage of lies. Why are you helping me?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Because you are innocent," she replied, "and because I fear what will happen if you are punished. I can't stop him entirely, but I can give you a chance to survive." Her gaze met his, and for the first time, Josiah saw desperation that wasn't just for him. It was for her, too. Eleanor was caught in a web of her husband's cruelty, and helping Josiah was as much about saving herself as it was about saving him. "We don't have time," she said urgently. "You must leave this workshop before he wakes. Hide until I find a way to speak to him. If you're caught here, it will be worse than punishment. It will be your death." Josiah's mind raced. He had never considered that the mistress herself could be his ally, but the urgency in her voice left no room for hesitation. "Then I will go," he said finally, nodding. "Tell me what to do." Eleanor gave him instructions, hushed and precise, as if every word could mean life or death. And for the first time, Josiah felt the weight of true danger pressing down on him, not from the overseer, not from the plantation, but from the man who ruled this household. Before he could ask another question, Eleanor grabbed his arm gently and whispered, "Be careful. If he finds out I came to you, we both die." Josiah nodded, heart racing. He would follow her instructions, but he knew the next hours would decide everything. If this part had you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button, comment what you think Josiah should do next, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss where the shocking secrets start to unfold.
He thought the danger was only from his master, but the truth Eleanor revealed was far more dangerous. The first rays of the sun were beginning to stretch across the fields, painting the plantation in golden light, but inside the workshop, the shadows clung stubbornly to the corners. Josiah could barely think. Every heartbeat echoed in his chest like a warning drum. Eleanor's warning that he would be punished at dawn for a crime he didn't commit still rang in his ears. He had trusted her words, yet a part of him wondered, why would the mistress of the plantation risk her safety for him? Eleanor's hands were pressed tightly together, fingers entwined, as she paced the room in a way she had never done in his presence. Finally, she stopped, turned to him, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Josiah, there's more you must know," she said, eyes darting nervously toward the door. "This isn't just about the silver tray. It's about my husband and the lies he tells to protect himself." Josiah's stomach knotted. He had suspected deception in the household before, but he never imagined it ran so deep. Eleanor's voice dropped even lower. "The silver tray wasn't stolen. It was sold by my husband to pay for his gambling debts. He's been hiding it from everyone, pretending that he lost it mysteriously. And now he wants someone else to pay for his sins. That someone is you." Josiah's breath caught. The world seemed to tilt around him. He had spent his entire life obeying the rules of this plantation, working honestly, keeping his head down. And now, because of William Whitford's lies, he faced punishment, maybe death. "But why tell me this?" Josiah asked cautiously. "Why risk your safety?" Eleanor's eyes flickered with fear and determination. Because if he punishes you, the truth dies with you, and I cannot bear to see that happen." There was a long silence. Josiah's mind raced, considering every possibility. To trust her meant risking everything. To ignore her could mean certain death. Finally, Eleanor stepped closer. "I can help you survive," she whispered. "I have influence in the house. I can intervene, but you must trust me, and you must follow my instructions exactly. If you don't, you won't live to see another day." Josiah nodded slowly. The fear in her voice was real, and it mirrored the fear he had always carried inside, the fear of being powerless, of being punished for things beyond his control. "And there's something else," Eleanor continued, her voice barely audible, trembling with a mixture of desperation and guilt. "I have no illusions about what people will think if they knew I helped you. They would call it inappropriate, dangerous, but right now, survival is more important than appearances." Josiah felt a strange mixture of gratitude and suspicion. This woman, the mistress of the plantation, was offering him a lifeline, but he knew that lifelines in this world were often twisted with hidden motives. "Where should I go?" he asked finally, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Eleanor gave precise instructions, the old smokehouse behind the barn. He was to hide there until she could confront her husband. Any delay, any mistake could cost him his life. She grabbed his arm for a brief moment, a flash of warmth and urgency. "Please, be careful. If he finds out I came to you, we both die." Josiah took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of fear and confusion in his chest. He would follow her instructions. He had no other choice. Survival meant trusting someone he never imagined could be his ally. As he prepared to leave, Eleanor whispered one final warning. "Do not let anyone see you.
And remember, the truth is dangerous, but it is worth everything." Josiah nodded. The weight of what he now carried, the knowledge of the master's lies, the mistress's courage, and the thin line between life and death settled heavily on his shoulders. He stepped toward the door, heart racing, knowing that every second counted. The first step toward survival had begun, but the next steps would demand cunning, courage, and perhaps a little luck. If this revelation shocked you as much as it shocked Josiah, hit that like button, comment what you would do in this place, and subscribe so you don't miss where a dangerous plan begins to take shape. Helping her could save his life, but one wrong move would cost them both everything. The first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, spilling pale light across the fields. Yet inside the workshop, the air was thick with tension. Josiah's mind raced, replaying every word Eleanor had spoken the night before. His innocence, the master's lies, and Eleanor's desperate warnings all collided into one unbearable thought. He could die before the sun even rose. Eleanor watched him carefully, her face pale but determined. "You have to leave," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "Go to the old smokehouse behind the barn. Hide there until I speak to my husband. You cannot be seen. If he catches you here, it will be far worse than punishment." Josiah hesitated. His life had been defined by careful obedience. Every step had been calculated, every word measured. Now the mistress of the house was asking him to risk it all for a chance at survival. One wrong move, and it could be the end. Why are you risking yourself for me?" he asked quietly, heart hammering. Eleanor's hands shook as she clutched the lantern closer. "Because it is not just your life at stake, it is mine as well. If my husband discovers I've helped you, he will not forgive me, and neither of us will survive. But I cannot let an innocent man die for his sins." Josiah swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling like stones in his stomach. This was more than fear. It was a dangerous alliance, built on necessity, trust, and the unspoken risk of betrayal. "Follow me," Eleanor said, motioning toward the small door at the back of the workshop. "I will show you the way, and remember, do exactly as I say." They moved quickly and silently, every creak of the floorboards making Josiah's chest tighten. Outside, the fields were quiet, but he could sense the ever-present eyes of the plantation watching. Overseers, neighbors, servants. Every step toward the smokehouse felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. Finally, they reached the old structure. Its walls were weathered and cracked, a forgotten relic at the edge of the property. Josiah slipped inside, taking in the small shadows and hiding spaces that would conceal him until Eleanor could act. "Stay here," she instructed, pressing a hand briefly against his arm. Her touch was fleeting, but it carried the urgency of a warning he could not ignore. "I will speak to my husband. I will try to convince him of the truth, but you must stay hidden. Do not come out until I tell you it is safe." Josiah nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. Could she really protect him? Could anyone truly stop a man like William Whitford when he had power, money, and fear on his side? Eleanor's eyes met his one last time, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Remember," she whispered, "if he finds out I came to you, we both die. Trust no one but me and do exactly as I have told you." With that, she slipped back into the shadows and disappeared toward the main house, leaving Josiah alone in the smokehouse. The silence pressed down on him, thick and suffocating. He could hear the faint noises of the awakening plantation, cows lowing in the distance, the faint sound of footsteps on wooden floors, birds starting their morning songs, but nothing compared to the pounding of his own heart. He sank to the floor, trying to calm himself, realizing that survival would require more than obedience. It would require cunning, courage, and perhaps a willingness to trust someone who, until yesterday, had seemed untouchable.
and somewhere deep inside, he knew this alliance with Eleanor would change everything. The first test had begun, and every moment until the master woke could decide their fate. If the tension has you holding your breath, hit like, comment what you think will happen next, and subscribe so you don't miss where the master's fury erupts and everything is on the line.
He thought he was safe, but the master was awake early, and his wrath would change everything. The plantation was waking to the soft light of dawn, but the quiet morning was deceiving. Birds chirped, cows lowed, and the distant sounds of servants beginning their work painted a picture of normalcy. Yet inside the main house, William Whitford, the master of the plantation, was already awake and already furious. Josiah, hidden in the old smokehouse, could feel the tension in the air, though he did not yet know the storm that was coming. Every instinct screamed at him to stay still, to stay quiet, and to trust Eleanor's plan. But even her plan could not account for the unpredictable fury of a man like William. Inside the house, Eleanor faced her husband with a steady, if trembling voice. "William," she said, "I know about the silver tray. Josiah did not take it." William's eyes narrowed, red with anger and suspicion. "And why should I believe you?" he growled, slamming a hand onto the polished table. "He's your servant, and you claim innocence on his behalf? Are you siding with him against me?" Eleanor stood her ground. "I am telling you the truth. The silver was sold. You did it yourself to cover your debts. Josiah is innocent." William's face turned purple with rage. "How dare you? Do you think you can manipulate me? I am the master of this house, and you will not undermine me with lies." Meanwhile, Josiah pressed himself against the wall of the smokehouse, heart racing. The creaking of the house, the booming voice of the master, it all reached him like a storm closing in. He prayed Eleanor's courage and words would hold, though he had no certainty. Outside, the overseers began to stir, sensing the tension from inside the house. William stormed toward the workshop, calling for Josiah. "Bring him here," he barked. "I want to see the thief with my own eyes." Josiah's breath caught. The plan, which had seemed possible only hours before, was collapsing. The smokehouse offered little protection if they discovered him, and Eleanor had no way to physically stop her husband's rage. He clenched his fists, remembering her words, "Do not let anyone see you. Trust no one but me." The footsteps drew closer. William's shadow fell across the doorway of the smokehouse as he bellowed for Josiah. The overseers, confused and unsure, hesitated. Then Eleanor's voice rang out from the house, strong despite the fear underlying it. "It's a lie, William. Josiah did not take the silver." The words pierced through the tension like a knife. William spun, eyes wide, and for a moment the fury faltered. The household froze in disbelief, a mistress confronting her husband so boldly it was unheard of. Josiah watched, heart pounding, as William's rage wavered, then burned anew, this time with humiliation. Neighbors and servants who had begun to gather outside whispered among themselves, sensing the scandal about to unfold. Somewhere in the chaos, Josiah realized that the truth Eleanor had risked everything to tell was beginning to change the rules of the plantation. Not everything was safe yet, but for the first time he saw a glimmer of hope. He remained hidden, listening as the confrontation continued, knowing that survival now depended on careful timing, courage, and the unpredictable consequences of defiance. The master's fury had erupted, and the fallout would reach every corner of the plantation.
If the suspense has you holding your breath, hit that like button, comment what you think will happen next, and subscribe so you don't miss the epic conclusion. Where the truth changes their lives forever. Everything Josiah thought he knew about danger, loyalty, and survival was about to be overturned in one shocking moment. The air on the Whitford plantation was thick with tension. The first light of morning illuminated the chaos that had erupted inside the main house. Josiah remained hidden in the smokehouse, heart hammering, every sense alert. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat could mean the difference between life and death. Inside the house, Eleanor faced her husband, William Whitford, whose anger had now shifted into disbelief. His face was flushed, his hands shaking, and for the first time he seemed vulnerable, exposed before the people who served him and before the truth that Eleanor was now boldly declaring. "He sold the silver, not Josiah," Eleanor shouted, her voice echoing through the halls. "You lied to everyone to cover your debts. Josiah is innocent." Gasps filled the room. The servants and overseers froze, stunned into silence. Neighbors who had gathered outside whispered in disbelief. William Whitford's face turned crimson, then pale, then red again as humiliation and rage warred in his eyes. Josiah, crouched in the shadows of the smokehouse, felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Eleanor's courage had given him a chance, a lifeline he had not dared hope for. But the danger was far from over. The master was unpredictable, and his fury had not fully subsided.
Eleanor pressed on, her voice trembling but resolute. "I cannot stand by and let an innocent man die for your sins. I have risked everything by telling the truth, and now it is too late for lies. You cannot punish Josiah without exposing yourself." William's hand shook as he clutched the table, his pride crumbling. The household murmured in astonishment, realizing that the powerful master could be challenged by his own wife. The social rules that had governed the plantation for decades seemed to bend, if only for this one moment. Outside, Josiah waited, every muscle tense, prepared for the worst. He knew that Eleanor's boldness might not be enough to save him completely. Yet, as he listened to the confrontation, he felt the first glimmer of hope in months. Hope that he might survive this nightmare and live to see freedom. The master finally slumped, defeated and enraged, unable to maintain his facade. Eleanor's risk had worked. The immediate threat to Josiah's life had passed. He was safe, for now. In the following days, the plantation became a place of whispers and rumors. William Whitford's credibility had been shattered. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of the scandal. Authority figures were involved, and Josiah's name was cleared of all accusations. But life on the plantation had changed irreversibly. Eleanor could no longer move without scrutiny, and Josiah's position, though technically safe, remained precarious. Yet one night, under the cover of darkness, he was quietly transferred to another estate, one where he would later gain his freedom. Eleanor never saw him again. Their lives had intersected for a brief, dangerous moment, bound by fear, courage, and the raw truth of the master's cruelty. Her courage had saved him, and though they were forever separated, the impact of that night endured. Josiah carried the memory of Eleanor's whispered warning and her determined voice with him, a reminder that sometimes courage and truth, even when forbidden or dangerous, could change the course of destiny. And in the quiet of the night, as he worked toward freedom and a life of his own making, Josiah understood something that the plantation had never taught him. Survival was not just about obedience, but about recognizing when to trust, when to act, and when to seize the one chance that could change everything. If this story shocked and inspired you, hit that like button, Share this video with friends who love true historical drama, and comment below with what you think Josiah and Eleanor felt in that moment. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden truths of history.